Welcome on this broadcast, Pawan Khera, representing the Congress, and squaring off against him on the Newstrack tonight is Amit Malviya, spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Pawan Khera, I want to start with you because at a moment when the future of the India-China relationship, the current deadlock between the Indian and the Chinese armies all along the line of actual control is being decided in this crucial meeting. We've had former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh come out and attack Narendra Modi, the current Prime Minister. I mean, the former Prime Minister's record when it comes to either Pakistan or China is far from stellar. Suddenly he's arguing for, a tougher response and saying that we must be very careful about what we do and how we proceed. After the Mumbai attacks happened, 166 Indians died. Manmohan Singh on his watch did nothing. Is this not a time when the Congress and everybody else, including the former Prime Minister, just back down, say, okay, let these meetings resolve themselves. There's a time for protestation. We will do politics later. Pawan Khera, kickstart our debate tonight.
Rahul Kanwal, two aspects to your question. Number one, Mr. Manmohan Singh's performance as Prime Minister as far as border incursions were concerned, according to you, were not steady. Mr. Nadda says that there were 600 incursions during our time. Conceded? Under their watch, since 2015, 2,264 incursions from the Chinese side, 3,289 ceasefire violations by Pakistan, up by 16 years as far as Pakistan is concerned. Highest in 30 years has been the shahadat of our forces. So Mr. Nadda has no business even comparing the two things. Now you say, this is not the right time for the former Prime Minister to give some sane advice to the current Prime Minister. Fine. I ask you, in 2013, when Mr. Lal Krishan Advani, Madam Sushma Swaraj and Mr. Arun Jaitley used to take delegations to Pranab Mukherjee Sahab, demanding on public platforms, on television channels, aap kya hathiyar istemal karenge Cheen ke khilaf? Is that information to be shared on public platforms? But they would come on channels and say, there is tension on the border. What is the kind of equipment you have? Please share with us. Nobody questioned them. And we definitely didn't call them Chinese agents. Fair enough, that's their style. Atalji in 1962 used to hold demonstrations, protests outside the parliament, at boat club, in the middle of action. But that's the kind of politics a democracy should have, where we as opposition parties and you as media, obviously we have to question every political party, every government. Nothing wrong in that. If
okay, let Amit Malviya respond.
You won't forgive us tomorrow.
Your principal argument is that when the BJP was in the opposition and the Chinese had intruded on Indian soil, the BJP too asked tough searching questions that doesn't make the BJP at that time a Chinese agent, and therefore doesn't make the Congress today a Chinese agent just because they're asking questions which you're finding difficult to answer. Amit Malviya will counter.
Well, Rahul, first of all, I was quite amused to see Dr. Manmohan Singh's letter this morning, assuming he was somebody who could not even assert himself within his own party. And we had a situation where Rahul Gandhi tore an ordinance that his government passed in public and humiliated the Prime Minister. For someone like him to come out and advise the current Prime Minister, I thought was rich, let alone his track record as far as Pakistan and China are concerned. It's best not spoken because India suffered in the 10 years that he was the Prime Minister. Well, now come to the more substantive issues on hand. What's happening in Ladakh at the moment? There was confrontation in the Galwan Valley, and the Indian troops have very successfully pushed back the Chinese. The fact is that we've inflicted far more damage on them than they could manage. Then the Congress conveniently tried to shift the goalpost to the Pyeongtaek area, which, as we all know, is not an issue that has been festering over the last 6 months or even for that matter last 6 years. It has been an issue that's been around for 21 years, and the Congress has presided over the Chinese incursion, gradual as it may be, but the finger 8 and finger 4, the area between that, the infrastructure that came up within the Congress period, and the Congress really did nothing about it. What is the Modi government talking about today? It is telling the Chinese that get off Galwan Valley, get off PP-14. They have been pushed out. And the government is also telling the Chinese that go back beyond finger eight, which is where you are supposed to be. Now, that's a more assertive, confident government that is directing its military to do what is appropriate on ground. But let's take a step back and look at history, because history has a lot of lessons for us. In 2013, when Shyam Saran, who was then Foreign Secretary and Chairman of the National Security Advisory Board, went to Ladakh and came back and submitted a report, he said that the Chinese have taken over additional 640 square kilometer of area. There have been 600 incursions. Dr. Manmohan Singh did nothing. In fact, you had A.K. Antony, who was then the defense minister, come on the floor of the House and admit that not building infrastructure was a conscious strategy of the Congress party for all these decades, because they thought it would dissuade the invaders or the aggressors. You had a situation where the UPA foreign minister went to Beijing in the midst of this aggression and says he would love to live in Beijing. Well, the love for China
Pawan
is
Khera,
not limited
respond,
to the Gandhis.
because
it afflicts the entire Congress party.
I want to
And
quote
that is
what
the truth.
Manmohan Singh says today: "We cannot and we will not be cowed down by the threats and intimidations, nor permit a compromise with our territorial integrity." On his watch, former Foreign Secretary Shyam Saran, and I have the report here which says that an aggregate of 640 kilometers across 3 sectors in Depsang, Chumar and Pangong Tso have been intruded upon and captured by the Chinese army. India has been prevented from patrolling these areas. This happened on your watch, and now you're talking about territorial integrity. Pawan Khera?
Rahul, for the first time in 45 years, in fact, I learnt it from you for the first time last week. For the first time in 45 years, have we witnessed this kind of an action on the Chinese border where we lose 20 of our soldiers. This is a first in 45 years. It can't be denied. It definitely can't. In 2003, when Mr. Vajpayee, just before elections, visited China, in fact, Mr. Vajpayee happens to be the first foreign minister who restored Indo-China relations in 1979, and we have those pictures of him, with a glass of wine in his hands with his Chinese counterpart restoring the relationship. In 2003, when he went there, he used the word recognition for the TAR, the Tibetan Autonomous Region, which experts back home were startled. And then he comes back to India and says, okay, they have recognized the merger of Sikkim. Within 1 hour, China refuted it. No, we have not recognized.
One second, I'm asking you, sir, 1 second. You can go back to Vajpayee ji, but right now my question is about Shyam Saran's report.
Like this, Mr. Kanwal.
I am not. I'm only asking you to answer the question that I'm asking.
Ask your questions.
But you haven't answered it, sir.
I'm not going to answer it? How do you know I'm not going to answer it?
Because you haven't answered it so far. Okay, go on.
Because I'm still talking, right? So please don't interrupt. Now, Mr. Amit Malviya, BJP legislators take lessons at school run by Communist Party of China. November 2014. I don't know what lessons were you learning there. BJP RSS team holds talks with CPC in China, where they are learning how the political party should control the economy. This is beyond shocking. What were you guys, Mr. Ram Madhav and company, what were you doing with CPC? What was this understanding which you had there? Why were you going to the party school? It is called the party school in China to learn what? The nation really needs to know this. So very easy to say China Prem. आज जो प्रधानमंत्री बोल रहे हैं वही स्टेटमेंट चाइना उसी का सहारा लेकर के ताली बजा रहा है. प्रधानमंत्री की बात पर चीन में ताली बज रही है.
This not very embarrassing that the Chinese propaganda media, their state-owned media, is quoting the Prime Minister back to say that there is actually no incursion, that the threat is being overplayed, and that actually everything is normal. And now they're just quoting the Prime Minister. If this had been Rahul Gandhi, or if this had been Sonia Gandhi, you would have torn into them for having given the opposition, which is the Chinese media or the Chinese government in this case, propaganda material. Now they seem to be doing that with what our Prime Minister said. Amit Malviya, respond to Pawan Khera.
Look, Rahul, there is a difference between a party having a party level talk with another party in any other country. We don't just do it with China. We've done it with Germany, UK and several other countries. And it's a very regular thing. But the problem arises when Sonia Gandhi goes with her entire family, enjoys Chinese hospitality and spends time in Beijing watching the Beijing Olympics. The problem arises when Rahul Gandhi signs an MOU, a memorandum of understanding. I don't think the BJP has ever signed an MOU with any political party on any issue. So there is a distinction, which is important to understand. As far as several agreements...
Nepal, what was your relation with Prajatantrik Party Nepal? Please
please finish. I mean, Pawan, you can be a little more...
Sorry, I just want you to come clean on your...
No, one second. Pawan Khera, this is not acceptable.
Sure.
When you wanted to speak, you wanted others to keep quiet. You must most certainly extend the same courtesy.
Sure. But Prajatantrik Party Nepal, please ask them their relationship.
So, Pawan, please. I mean, I don't want to get into the slanging match with you at the moment.
Okay, Pawan Khera's fader goes down. Pawan Khera, if you interfere... Sorry, Pawan Khera's fader will go down. He will not be allowed to speak till Amit Malviya completes. Amit Malviya.
The Congress party, while in office, signed various agreements in 1993, 1996, 2005, 2012, and none of those were honored by the Chinese. So clearly, there was a problem in the way the Chinese treated the Congress regime. And when Pawan Khera says that in the last 45 years, it's the first time that there has been a casualty, I will tell you why that's been the case. It has been so because for the first time, the Indian army has given back to the Chinese and saying, just back off. We are not going to allow you to take over any more territory of ours. The Congress never did it. The Congress were pacifiers. They sent their foreign affairs minister to Beijing while they were making incursions and inroad on the border. That is the difference between this government and the previous Congress regimes. And this is difficult for the Congress to understand because they've always eaten out of the dragon's bowl. We haven't. We won't. We will never.
I have a challenge for you, Pawan Khera. Can I ask you to answer the question that I asked? Okay, because last time you gave your own speech without answering my question. My question is this.
Sure.
Shyam Saran, as Foreign Secretary and later in the National Security Advisory Board, when he went to Ladakh, came back with a report saying, on your watch, you ceded 640 kilometers of territory in 3 sectors of Ladakh to China. Unlike the current government, you didn't even push back. They came in, you let them be, and your defense minister at that time is on parliament on record saying, one second sir, saying that they're way ahead of us in infrastructure. There's very little we can do. We've lost the race. Respond just to this question, Pawan Khera.
Rahul, the LAC as it stands, with whatever differing perceptions we quote unquote talk about, as on April 2020, I asked them, has it changed? Has the status quo changed? And then you compare it with what happened during our reign, and then let's have a proper oranges to oranges discussion. You can't have an oranges to apples discussion. Let's be very clear. As on April, now who do we go by? The PM says one thing, the PMO contradicts the PM. The Raksha Mantri contradicts the the foreign minister. So who do we take seriously in this entire scenario? Imagine the PM versus the PMO is for the first time.
No, but you aren't answering the question of how you lost 640 kilometers of territory on your watch.
I have answered it.
What's the answer to that? You didn't even contest, you didn't even push back, you didn't fight back.
It has to be oranges to oranges.
No, who's the orange, who's the apple? What is the orange, what is the apple? I'm not understanding that.
If you are willing to listen to it, the so-called differing perceptions on the line of actual control. What is the differing perception? This government has it pushed them back as they were on April 30th, 2020? Let's compare this with what happened in 2013 when Doklam was happening. Mr. Amit Malviya, you know where Mr. Modi was और किसके साथ झूला झूल रहे थे? वहाँ पीछे डोकलाम हो रहा था. तो इसलिए आप हमारे फॉरेन मिनिस्टर बीजिंग गए, वहाँ गए, ये सब मत बोलिए. प्रधानमंत्री जब मुख्यमंत्री थे गुजरात के, पता नहीं क्या चीन का प्रेम था. Actually, Rahul, there were 2 countries who recognized him. West had boycotted him. It was Japan and China. And he kept going to China and all kinds of agreements with China, with Gujarat, with universities. We don't question your patriotism at all because that's not the way we are. But questions will definitely rise. आपका किस तरह की diplomacy थी चाइना के साथ? इतना प्रेम था उसके बाद ये क्या हुआ? This question will have to be answered by you.
Okay, let Amit Malviya respond to the primary problem. The reason that there is ambivalence and confusion is because the government hasn't conceded that territory, most certainly in Pangong, which used to be patrolled by the Indian Army earlier, is currently under the occupation of the Chinese Army, and you're trying very hard to push them back. but the fact that status quo has been altered and that they're sitting on land that we believe is ours is a reality. Because you don't accept that, therefore the Congress finds something to attack you with, and because you're giving half an answer about a particular sector, which is why we're getting caught in a tangle. If you accept the reality and then push back, then all of India pushes the Chinese army back, Amit Malviya.
Rahul, I am going to just put out facts for your viewers. I will not get into any rhetoric like my counterpart did just when he was speaking. There are two issues that have to be taken into account here. One is the Galwan Valley. There is no differing perception of the LAC on the Galwan Valley. The Chinese came up to PP14. Why? Because they wanted to be at a vantage point from where they could see the newly built Daulatabad Oldie road, which connects Leh, a road that had been in making for the last 19 years and was completed under the Modi government.
Correct.
Obviously, we did not want them at that vantage position because it makes the Indian asset infra vulnerable. We have asked them to go back. We have uprooted their trends and sent them back. That answers the question on the Galwan Valley. So there is no differing perception of LAC, and there is no question of they crossing over the LAC, or for that matter, occupying any territory which is India's. Now come to the Pyongyang show. I said this again. This is an issue which is a 21-year-old issue. In 2004, they built two-track asphalted road there. In 2006, the Chinese built a naval base at Finger 6. In 2018, they finally got an infantry center going because they had been working on it for the last 10 years when UPA was there. Now the situation is that we patrol all the way till Finger 8. They come from Finger 8 to Finger 4. So it's not as if we have ceded control. We are still patrolling that area, and so are the Chinese. The Chinese have built some infrastructure, and let me tell you, in 2014, there were only 2 huts of the Indian establishment on Finger 4. By October 2014, within a couple of months of Modi ascending to power, we ensured that there was physical infrastructure there, and we pushed back the Chinese. They never came beyond Finger 4 as a result. Now what we are telling the Chinese in light of the escalation that has happened is that they have to go back. Mr. Modi is the Prime Minister of India. He will meet all world leaders, including the Chinese Premier. We are going to have dialogue. But if the Chinese don't understand the language of dialogue, then we have our military and they are free to act as the government of India directs them.
Would you concede, sir,
that they go back
Mr.
to
Malviya?
the status quo
No, sure.
at Finger 8.
So we are pushing back hard, but would you concede that Prime Minister Modi and his outreach towards China has collapsed in the most dramatic fashion? That he was pushed by a sense of optimism which has turned out to be completely unfounded in logic and reason and fact, and is in several senses proved to be a bad bet. He stakes so much personal equity, whether it's in the swings of Sabarmati, the temples of Mamallapuram, or in Xi'an, so much personal equity, and in the end Xi Jinping has taken a dagger and stabbed him.
Look, Rahul, you can either have a very submissive Prime Minister who would worry about his personal equity and his political clout and not take the tough decisions, or walk the uncharted path. But Mr. Modi is not like other prime ministers that this country has seen. He believes in staking his personal equity for the stake of this country. He did that with Pakistan. He tried to reset the relationship with Pakistan. Pakistan did not respond. There was Uri, there was surgical strike, and then there was the airstrike that happened. With China also, he did make a fresh beginning. He invested his personal equity, as you said. He has the political mandate of the people of this country. He told the Chinese premier that we can resolve our issues, but it will be on equal terms. And now that the Chinese have reneged, the Indian army has acted as it should in the interest of the country.
Pawan Khera, final words.
Prime Minister Modi for standing by what is in the
he
interest
attempted
of the country.
peace, it didn't work out. He is pushing back harder than any Indian Prime Minister in the last 4 decades. The fact that the clashes happened in Galwan is quite unlike what happened under the UPA, where they came in and you just came back and said, oh, we've lost the infrastructure race. Prime Minister Modi and this government is not willing to accept that they're losing. They're pushing back hard. That's the reality, Pawan Khera.
Rahul, you first talk about Quad, the quadrilateral security dialogue. Tell me one nation of Quad which came and criticized China in no uncertain terms.
The United States, as Mike Pompeo has...
No, they have not condemned. No, they have not condemned in the language. You understand that language better than I do because you've been covering foreign affairs. Number two, you go there on visits which are without agenda. This is unprecedented. Number three, you keep appeasing China. You cancel the Dalai Lama event in 2018. You cancel the IDSA event in 2018, all because of pressure, straight, direct, visible, audible pressure from China. How much will you appease China? And then you say, oh, he's pushing back. I'm sorry. It's a collapse of the individual-centric diplomacy of the Prime Minister. We have to concede that. He doesn't know foreign policy and he doesn't trust people who know foreign policy. If you don't know something, please trust your experts. He doesn't want to do that because he wants limelight, 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 nothing else but limelight.
Mike Pompeo called China a rogue actor in its own neighborhood. He says the PLA has escalated border tensions that we see in India, the world's most populist democracy. We're seeing it militarize the South China Sea and illegally claiming more territory there. It's a promise that they have broken again. I'm not certain what you have in mind when you say countries in the Quad haven't come out and spoken for India.
I'll tell you. Because the countries in the Quad are upset with India that soon after Wuhan, you don't even show any interest in Quad. Wuhan hote hi aap Quad bhul gaye. Australia is complaining. Every other country, Japan is complaining. So please show some consistency in your
foreign policy. So I'm out of time. The reality is all governments in India in the past have been guilty of trying to appease China in the false mistaken notion that they can find a way of making peace. Through this build-up along the India-China border and the treachery in Galwan, China has shown it doesn't want peace. Maybe those romantic notions of Hindi, Chini, Bhai, Bhai will be smashed once and forever. At this moment, as I said, there is a very important general level conversation happening in Moldo, Chushul at the border personnel meeting post. And that's what we are tracking. And that's really what we should be fighting against. The enemy is China. The enemy is not our own people, our own political parties. But this politics is also a part of our democracy, and that story plays out simultaneously. We're slipping into a break right now. When we come back. Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kanwal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.